7. We had washed our hands, and we sat about the table. And in the house of my rabbi's mother, the table, which is like unto the altar of God, was tended with great cleanness, and set according to all the commandments. And they of the house sat about the table in the order of their years, the mother at the head of the table, and her eldest son by her, and the brothers according to their years. And we too, the guests, were dealt with honorably, and were seated by the mother on the other side from her eldest son. And the rabbi blessed the bread, and broke it, and dipped the piece in salt. And we all did likewise, and dipped our bread in salt, as the commandment biddeth, the eldest first, and the others in the order of their years. And thus it was with the dish. The eldest first dipped his hand in the dish that stood upon the table, and the others after him in the order of their years. And after we had eaten and washed our hands with water, we blessed the Lord, who had sated us, so that we still had food left. And then the mother prepared for the rabbi a bed in the booth that was on the roof, wherein he abode what time he was in the home. And the rabbi lifted up the night lamp, and said, Peace unto his mother, and his brothers, and ourselves, his disciples. And he went up to the booth on the roof, for he was weary with the wandering and work of the day. And we were left in the room with the mother and the brothers. And when we were alone with the mother and brothers, then we two, Simon Bar-Jonah and myself, drew near to the mother, and bowed before her, and said, Thou blessed of women, blessed be the womb which hath brought forth the light of Israel. Our mother too art thou, for the mother of the rabbi is the mother of his disciples. As it is written, He that teacheth the Torah unto one is as if he had begotten him. Now tell us, we pray thee, of the life and acts of thy Son until this day, that we may know who our rabbi is. And the mother sat upon the threshold of the house, and by the light of the stars she recounted unto us, What shall I tell you, and what shall I recount, disciples of my Son? Blessed be the Lord that I have been deemed worthy of him. We come of poor people, and our dwelling is with the common folk, and our being springeth from the workers. And it was thus, when I was big with my son, that joy filled my breasts, and I knew that the Lord had sent something great unto me. And I prayed to our Father in heaven, and I said, When it shall be thy will that thy maidservant bringeth forth a son, I shall make him thine, as Hannah made her son Samuel. And when my time came near, then my husband took me, his wife, and the small burden of his household, and took us unto Bethlehem in Ephrath, which is in Judah, for we came thence. And when there was the census in the land, each of us was commanded to appear in his place. And the city of Bethlehem was overfull with people, for all those that were of the city had been commanded to appear there. And there was none that could admit us into a house, and we lodged with others of the poor in the yard of an inn. And my husband fared forth, and found work with a carpenter, that he might earn our daily bread. And when it was time for me to be brought upon the midwife's stool, then my husband spoke with the shepherds, which kept their flocks outside the city, that they might give me leave to bear the child in the stable, where they kept their young sheep. For it was winter in the land, and it was exceeding cold, and we were in the street, and there was no roof over our heads. And the shepherd folk were filled with compassion, and they were men of kindness and God-fearing. And they made a corner for me in the stable in the midst of the sheep, and they spread out hay and straw to keep me warm. Now may ye know in what spirit I poured forth my sad heart before the Lord, saying, Look thou upon my shame, that I bring forth my firstborn amid the sheep like a beast. And my husband sat by me and comforted me, saying, Be not downcast, wife, for in a stable shall be born he that is to help Israel. And was not our king and father David a shepherd of this city? And did not God take him from among the sheep to be a king in Israel? Who knoweth, my wife, but that our son shall likewise be a king, for he is of the seed of David? And other words of comfort like these my good husband spoke to me. And when it was time for me to go on the midwife's stool, there was none near to help me, save my husband. But God looked upon my need, and came to my help to lift up my spirit. And he lit the moon and stars above me, and they looked in through the open roof, and it was as though they comforted me. And there was stillness about me, and my heart trembled, and fear came upon me. For I am but a sinful woman, and unlearned in the law of God. But it seemed to me that the heavens had covered themselves with glory, and peace and goodwill descended to all men with the coming forth of the child. And I called to my husband and said, I know not how it is with me, but meseemeth that I see a great light, and singing reacheth my ears, and sweet odours like those of Eden surround me. And my husband answered, It is because thy heart was heavy, and God looked upon our shame, and comforted thee, for thou hast borne a son. And I asked him, But whence cometh this light? For it seemeth to me that the moon and stars have entered the stable to give me greeting. And he, helping me, said, It is a good sign, my wife, that thou seest much light, for it signifieth that a light hath been born in Israel. And he laid my newborn in my hands, and he covered me with a mantle of hair. And the young sheep and the cattle pressed about my resting place, and they licked me with their tongues, and they crouched by us as to keep us warm, for it was cold in the stable. And my husband said, See, my wife, even the cattle come to rejoice with thee. And he comforted me, saying, Our forefathers too were shepherds, and God called Moses from the midst of pasturing his sheep, that he might lead Israel out of Egypt. Therefore, my wife, be not fallen in spirit, that thy son was born among sheep. Thus my husband spoke to me at that time. And the good shepherd folk likewise came from their flocks in the fields, and they greeted me and comforted me, and they brought a cruse of milk and bread, and put them before me. And they said, Peace unto thee, mother in Israel. God meaneth well with thee, for it is a night of great brightness, such as we have not seen before. The stars are big, and the moon in the fullness of light is above, and the peaks of snow look down from the hills. It must be that a light hath ascended in Israel. And I said to them, Thanks be unto ye, good shepherds, for your words. And they covered my feet with sheepskins, for it was cold, and the hour of my need became the hour of my happiness. And we abode there with the shepherd folk until the time came that I should bring my son into the covenant of Abraham. And we called his name in Israel Yeshua, which signifieth a help unto Israel. And my husband took me and his firstborn son and all that he had, and we went up to Jerusalem, the holy city, on our way home. For the time had come for me to bring my sacrifice of purification, and to put my son before the priest, that he might give redemption and release to my firstborn. And I brought the offering and sacrifice of the poor upon the altar, 2 doves, and my husband took my son in one hand, and in the other 5 silver shekels of the weight of Zidon. And he stood before the priest, and the priest asked him, What wouldst thou rather render unto the Lord, thy son, or the 5 shekels of silver to redeem thy firstborn, who belongeth to God, as Moses taught us? And when my husband gave the 5 shekels of silver to the priest took them. But there stood nearby a devout man, and his name was Simon. And it was known in all Jerusalem that he was a just man, and the Spirit of God rested upon him. And he took my son out of the arms of his father, and lifted him up on high, and said, It may be that this is the Messiah. I thank thee, O Lord, that I have seen the Helper of Israel. And it came about later, when I told this to the mothers that were assembled in the court of the women, having come likewise for the redeeming of their firstborn, that they said, He hath done this with our firstborn likewise. For this man waiteth for the Redeemer of Israel, and he hath prayed God that he shall not see death before he hath seen the Messiah of the Jews. And he waiteth the whole day by the priest, and every firstborn son that is brought to be redeemed, he lifteth up in his hands, and saith, Perchance this is the Messiah. For it may be the portion of any Jewish mother to bring forth the Messiah, the Redeemer of Israel. And my husband brought me and his son and his household to our home.